she has her arms linked around that man.
The disciples quickly took notice of the intimate atmosphere around the two, which greatly shocked them. Chu Liuxiang and the other ladies within the Demon Sealing faction had earned a reputation for themselves throughout the year for being unobtainable because even core disciples were shot down without any hesitation.
Is that why she's rejected everyone who approached her? 'Cause she's already taken? That's the only logical explanation. It's a pity, but I can see why she chose that man. He has this hard-to-describe natural charm about him.
Yuan found himself constantly being stared at by the disciples until they reached the myriad of techniques.
Wow, so this is what it looks like in the seventh heaven.
Yuan muttered in surprise as they stepped inside. Unlike the compact, space-saving libraries of the lower heavens, the myriad of techniques here resembled a grand, traditional archive with vast halls stretching in every direction, towering shelves, and an abundance of open space. The place was so vast that Yuan couldn't even see the other walls, only the one behind them near the entrance. It was as if the space extended endlessly in all directions.
Impressive, right? We were also quite shocked when we first came here.
Chu Liuxiang smiled. Yuan nodded and glanced around. The first thing he noticed was that most of the people present weren't disciples of the super-perfect physique-tempering sect. Some wore the robes of other sects, while others had no uniform at all, suggesting they were independent cultivators or unaffiliated visitors. This suggested that regardless of which myriad of techniques one entered in the seventh heaven, they all led to the same vast, interconnected space. Despite being filled with thousands of cultivators, the place was incredibly silent, with the only noise being the sound of pages being flipped. Since most of the cultivators there flew around when they traveled, the place lacked even the sound of footsteps. Sometime later, they arrived before a guarded teleportation device.
Welcome back, Lady Meishio and Lady Chu.
The guard greeted them with respect before turning to look at Yuan and asking,
Will he be accompanying you today?
Meishio nodded and said,
He doesn't have a medallion, but he's very close friends with Senior Bai. Oh, I have Senior Bai's medallion if that's what you mean.
Yuan showed the guard the medallion. The guard subconsciously straightened his back before bowing to Yuan.
Welcome, esteemed guest.
The guard then activated the teleportation device. Once Yuan and the others entered the device, they were teleported directly to a familiar place, Senior Bai's world.
When does Yuro and the others usually show up?
Yuan asked.
They should show up in an hour. We came here early because we wanted to surprise Yuro,
said Meishio.
With that said, you should hide until they arrive.
Chu Liuxiang added. Yuan nodded and completely erased his presence, dumbfounding them.
Wow, even though I am staring right at you, I cannot sense your presence. Is this what it feels like to hallucinate?
Chu Liuxiang remarked. Yuan smiled and said,
Want to learn it? I have given the others martial techniques, but I haven't given the two of you anything yet. It's a technique that hides your presence.
Chu Liuxiang and Meishio nodded. Thus, Yuan transferred the shadow veil to them.
This is a celestial rank technique?
They exclaimed after learning of its rarity.
Are you sure we can actually learn this?
Meishio asked, swallowing nervously. This would be their very first celestial rank technique. Yuan smiled and responded.
That's a silly thing to ask. Of course, you can learn it. No matter how precious this technique is, it'd be useless if it could not be learned. Also, this will help you guys in case you encounter some trouble. Once we return to the sect, I plan to share even more techniques with all of you.
Yuan said, his tone solemn.
What happened at Dragon Spiral Mountain reminded me, just being connected to me can put you in danger. I want to make sure you're prepared.
Yuan went into hiding shortly after to wait for Yuro and the others' arrival. 3 hours later, several new presences appeared in Senior Bai's world.
Sorry, we're late. We ran into some trouble on our way here.
A beautiful woman with white hair spoke as she entered the place. It was Bai Lianhua, and following behind her were two women who were just as beautiful.
Trouble? Are you guys okay? Yes. Just the usual womanizers trying to hit on us.
Bai Lianhua said with a sigh, her tone a mix of irritation and resignation.
Is it just the two of you today? What happened to the others?
Xia Jingyi asked when she could only see Meishio and Chu Liuxiang. Chu Liuxiang smiled and said,
Yes, it's just us today. The others are busy with some new techniques. How have you been, Yuro?
Meishio asked softly, her gaze resting on the tall, graceful woman quietly standing beside Xia Jingyi.
The same as usual, but we're preparing to head to the fourth heaven,
said Yuro, who had matured into a graceful, poised woman over the past few years, her presence now marked by a calm, naturally aloof aura that set her apart. However, there was a faint weariness in her face, subtle, but telling, like someone who hadn't been sleeping well for some time. Hanging by her hips was a beautiful fan. However, if one looked closely, it was only a spirit-grade treasure.
Have you found out anything about my brother?
Yuro proceeded to ask, her voice laced with worry. It was always the first question she asked whenever they met, ever since she'd learned that Yuan had returned to Earth and reclaimed his body. Meishio and Chu Liuxiang remained silent. Seeing this, Yuro lowered her head in a dejected manner and sighed.
The same as usual, huh?
However, as she lowered her head, she suddenly caught sight of a pair of legs standing just behind her, startling her so much that she jumped in surprise.
Who the hell?
Yuro spun around sharply, but the rest of her words froze in her throat the moment her eyes met the familiar, handsome face standing behind her. Though Yuan had also matured and grown even more handsome over the years, Yuro would have recognized his face anywhere.
Brother.
She whispered, her voice quivering as her eyes grew moist. Yuan greeted with an apologetic smile.
It's been a while, Yuro.
2001, Yuro's true feelings.
Brother.
Unable to contain herself, Yuro subconsciously threw herself into his arms, wrapping him in a tight embrace, years of longing and emotion pouring into that single, desperate gesture.
Why Yuan?
Bai Lianhua exclaimed in a shocked tone, her eyes wide with surprise. Xia Jingyi swallowed nervously, her face slightly red after seeing Yuan's handsome face.
I'm sorry it took this long to see you guys again.
Yuan said as he caressed Yuro's back, who was only a head shorter than him now. Yuro didn't respond. She simply held him tighter, burying her face into his robes as if afraid he might vanish if she let go.
You were unable to log off Cultivation Online for several years, right? How is your body right now?
Bai Lianhua asked since it seemed like Yuro wasn't going to speak.
My body is fine. If I weren't a cultivator, it would have been dangerous. So that is your real body, correct? Correct.
He confirmed.
Does this mean we won't be able to see you on Earth again?
Bai Lianhua continued to ask.
For now, but it's not like I cannot return to Earth ever again. Unfortunately, I don't know when that will happen. It could take years if not decades before I get to return safely.
Yuro's body trembled at such words. Yuan noticed this and looked down, but he wasn't sure what to say. Yuro suddenly lifted her face from his chest and looked at him, with tears flowing down her face.
Brother. What if I want to come to the 9 heavens?
She asked.
That's.
Yuan became speechless. While he was certain the Celestial Emperor would do everything in his power to prevent him from returning to the 9 heavens if he visited Earth, he wasn't sure how the Celestial Emperor would respond to others attempting to enter the 9 heavens. After a moment of silence, Yuan finally spoke.
That's not a decision you make on a whim. Choosing this path means giving up the life you've known. It's not something to take lightly. I know that.
She shouted. After a brief pause, she continued softly.
When you first left home with Meishio, I realized just how much I hated being apart from you. Every day felt like a small ache. But I endured it, because, back then, I could still see you often enough. But after you moved to Dragon Spiral Mountain and I joined the Eternal Lotuses, we've barely seen each other at all. Then you couldn't log out of Cultivation Online, and now it's been over half a decade since we last saw each other.
Her voice trembled as she continued.
I can't do this anymore, brother. It's become too much for me to bear. You're the only family member I have left. Yuro.
Yuan didn't know what to say. He shifted his gaze to the others, who shook their heads in silence. After a moment of silence, Yuan sighed and said,
If that's what you really want, I won't stop you. However, it's going to take some time to open the gateway between our worlds again, so you'll have to wait until then. In the meantime, I'll try to visit you as much as possible.
Yuro nodded.
Okay.
She mumbled. Once Yuro had calmed down, they gathered around a table, and Yuan began recounting his experiences over the past few years, sharing the long and winding journey that had kept them apart. However, aside from Yuro, the others struggled to focus, still caught up in the weight of her earlier outburst. None of them had noticed her pain before since she had always carried herself with quiet strength, acting composed and independent. Even Meishio, who had always been the closest to Yuro, had failed to see the loneliness hiding behind her calm demeanor. It wasn't until recently, when Yuro had finally stopped pretending, that Meishio began to see her pain. Once Yuan finished recounting his journey, Yuro and the others began recalling theirs. Bai Lianhua would spend most of her time and effort growing her faction both on Earth and in the 9 heavens, while Xiaojingyi focused on improving her zither techniques, even joining a music sect for 3 years. As for Yuro, cultivation had become her only escape from the loneliness she carried. She immersed herself in it for most of her days, using it as a shield against the emptiness, hence why her cultivation had surpassed, even by Lianhua, being at the 7th level of Spirit Lord. On occasion, she took on monster extermination quests, not for merit or recognition, but simply to vent the emotions she kept buried inside.
Brother, it's been a while since you last saw Snowy, right? Do you even remember her? Oh, that tiger cub from back then? I remember.
He nodded.
She's grown a lot since then, and she even saved my life many times. Come out, Snowy.
Yuro suddenly called. In the next moment, a towering figure emerged from Yuro's dantian and appeared at her side. No longer the small, adorable cub from years past, Snowy had grown into a majestic white tiger, massive in size, and with a fierce and commanding presence.
Wow, you've really grown.
Surprisingly, Snowy's cultivation was at the peak of Spirit King, an entire realm stronger than her own master. However, the moment Snowy laid eyes on Yuan, she instinctively shrank back, her massive form trembling ever so slightly, an involuntary reaction born of instinctual reverence.
Snowy? There's no need to be afraid. This is my brother. Don't you remember?
Yuro was quite surprised by Snowy's reaction. In fact, she'd never seen Snowy acting nervous before, much less afraid. Seeing this, Yuan smiled and said,
She must be reacting to my bloodline.
He suddenly retrieved a glass vial that contained his blood and offered it to Yuro.
Feed her this. It'll help her grow. This is blood?
Yuro looked at the vial with interest and confusion, wondering why Yuan wanted her to feed Snowy blood. 2002 Snowy's transformation.
Is this blood from a magical beast or something?
Yuro asked as she uncorked the vial. A distinct scent immediately filled the air, one perceptible only to beasts. Snowy's ears perked up and her eyes widened with excitement, her instincts awakened by the unmistakable aroma. Like a beast in heat, Snowy pounced onto Yuro, who quickly shouted,
Ah! You're going to make me drop it.
However, Snowy didn't move away. Instead, she leaned in even closer, her tongue poking out eagerly as she pressed her head toward the vial, like someone desperately trying to catch a single drop of water in the desert.
Okay. Okay. I get it. Here.
Yuro said in a flustered tone as she quickly poured the blood onto Snowy's outstretched tongue. The moment the blood touched her taste buds, Snowy's entire body quivered with delight, her pupils dilating as a surge of satisfaction rushed through her. In the very next moment, Snowy let out a thunderous roar as her aura exploded outward, wild and untamed, shaking the air around her. Meanwhile, notifications began appearing before Yuro. Snowy has consumed blood. Snowy's bloodline has started to transform. Progress, 5%.
Snowy's bloodline is transforming.
Yuro exclaimed after seeing these notifications.
What? Really?
Bai Lianhua and Xiaojingyi were just as surprised to hear this.
What was that blood you fed her?
Yuro turned to look at Yuan for answers. Yuan smiled and said,
It's my blood. Huh?
Yuro and the others stared at him with wide eyes, seemingly unable to comprehend it.
My bloodline is quite unique and has the ability to evolve a beast's bloodline. It's not guaranteed, but it has a higher chance of working on those with a weaker bloodline. What an incredible ability, as expected of my brother.
Yuro murmured with quiet admiration. She then glanced at Snowy, who had suddenly crouched down, her massive form curling slightly, as if she had suddenly drifted off to sleep.
She'll be fine. Just give her some time to evolve her bloodline.
Yuan explained. Yuro nodded. Some time later, Yuro spoke in a faint, dispirited voice.
Brother, are you going to leave again soon? No, I'll be staying at the super perfect physique tempering sect for some time to let my body finish merging some more.
Yuro's expression immediately brightened, and she asked,
Then, can I spend more time with you? Of course.
He nodded. They continued chatting for almost an entire day until Bai Lianhua said,
It was very nice seeing you again, Yuan. I'd like to stay here for longer, but I have a lot of work to do at the faction. Let's meet again soon. See you later.
Xiaojingyi spoke in a timid voice.
Before you go, let me give you something.
Yuan transferred several techniques to them, bestowing cultivation and martial arts methods to Bai Lianhua, while entrusting Xiaojingyi with a collection of profound zither techniques.
These are ancient and mythic rank techniques.
Bai Lianhua exclaimed in shock after realizing what Yuan had given her. Xiaojingyi was too shocked to even say anything.
No need to thank me. Just consider it a gift for taking care of my sister when I couldn't.
Yuan said.
You can leave without me. I'll stay here for a little longer.
Yuro said.
Okay.
Once Bai Lianhua and Xiaojingyi left, Meishio and Chu Liuxiang also left a little bit later, leaving Yuan and Yuro alone.
How long are you going to stay?
Yuro asked him.
I'll stay here until you want to leave.
He said.
Are you sure? Don't you have a lot of things to do? Yes, but they can wait for now. In that case, I'll stay here as long as possible.
Over the next several days, Yuro and Yuan spent their time reminiscing about their childhood. Yuan would often play the zither for her, guide her through her cultivation, and pass down several techniques to help her grow stronger. Time passed quickly, and before they realized, they'd spent almost an entire month inside Senior Bai's world.
I'll leave tomorrow.
Yuro said. Although she wanted to spend more time with Yuan, she knew that she couldn't keep him there forever.
Okay.
Later that night,
Brother, can I sleep with you tonight?
Yuro knocked on his door and asked.
You're not a child anymore, you know. So what? I still want to snuggle with you like we used to. I'm coming in.
Inside his room, Yuan was seated on the floor.
You're cultivating? Now that I've reached immortal ascension, I don't need to sleep anymore.
Yuan explained.
In fact, I feel far more rested through cultivation than I would from sleeping. Since this is going to be my last day with you, sleep with me.
She pulled him off the floor and dragged him to the bed.
You may have grown up, but you're still a bit spoiled, aren't you?
Yuan said with a warm smile. Yuro didn't reply, but a quiet smile spread across her face. A few quiet minutes passed as they lay side by side on the bed. Then, in a soft voice, Yuro whispered.
Brother. What is it? When do you think I'll be able to travel to the 9 heavens? Hard to say. After all, we need someone who can activate the teleportation device on Earth, but the Lord has already sacrificed his cultivation to open it.
He continued.
Even if you make it to the 9 heavens, what will you do then? I want to go where you go.
She immediately said.
That's too dangerous. There's no way I can bring you to the places I'll be going. I don't need to be exactly by your side. I just want to be near enough so you can visit more conveniently. But you can do that already through the myriad of techniques. It doesn't feel the same.
She sighed.
I want to be with you physically, not in this avatar.
Eventually, Yuro drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep, the kind she hadn't experienced in years. 2003 meeting Li Jinsy. The following morning, Yuro slowly opened her eyes.
Brother.
She whispered, a warm smile blossoming on her face as she gazed at Yuan, peacefully asleep beside her. A sudden impulse stirred within her, and after a brief moment of hesitation, she leaned in and pressed a soft, gentle kiss on his lips. Yuan opened his eyes a few moments later.
Good morning, brother.
Yuro acted normally, but her face was flushed with redness.
Morning. I'll make breakfast.
Yuro said as she got off the bed and left the room. After she left, Yuan released a deep sigh. With his experience, there was no way he hadn't noticed it. Yuro's feelings for him went beyond simple sibling affection. While it might appear as familial love on the surface, he could clearly sense the deeper emotions she tried to hide. Even if they weren't blood-related, they had grown up together as siblings, and that bond carried weight. Yuan wasn't sure how he would respond if Yuro ever chose to confess her feelings. Would he be able to accept her, or would that line between them remain one he couldn't cross? Sometime later, after eating breakfast, they made their way to the exit.
Brother, do you think I'll be able to see you again soon?
She asked. He nodded and said,
I'll try to meet you again before I return to my journey. Okay. It's a promise.
Yuro suddenly embraced him tightly.
Take this before you go.
Yuan retrieved a spatial ring and offered it to her.
What's this?
She asked.
There are a few treasures inside that will help you if you ever get yourself into trouble that you cannot handle. Thank you.
Once Yuro left, Yuan also left the myriad of techniques and returned to the super perfect physique tempering sect.
Wow, I didn't think you'd spend an entire month with Yuro.
Chu Liuxiang remarked when he returned.
A month is nothing if you consider how long we've been apart.
He said.
That's true. What are you going to do now?
Meishio asked.
I'll stay at this sect for a little longer. Also, there's still someone I need to talk to. Oh, you mean Jinsy?
Chu Liuxiang said. He nodded and said.
She's definitely waiting for me. Good luck.
Meishio said. Yuan left to find Li Jinsy shortly afterward. After asking around, he made his way to the training grounds, but not the one reserved exclusively for the sect leader. Instead, he headed to the grounds designated for sect elders, where Li Jinsy was known to train. She often sparred with the elders, as none of the regular disciples were strong enough to challenge her. When he arrived, Li Jinsy was in the middle of a sparring match with a sect elder who was at the bronze immortal stage while only being at the peak of divine ancestor herself. Moreover, though faint, Li Jinsy was unmistakably using immortal chi.
No matter how many times I witness it, it still amazes me how she can wield immortal chi at her current cultivation level. She's a true prodigy. I heard she had just stepped into the divine realm when she joined the sect around 5 years ago. If she'd arrived a few years earlier, she might already be an immortal by now. Her combat experience is frighteningly high for someone her age. I heard she's not even 100 years old, yet she fights like someone who's lived through millennia of battle.
Yuan could hear the murmurs of the sect elders watching from the sidelines, their voices laced with awe and deep respect for Li Jinsy's talent and rapid rise. Eventually, the sparring ended in a draw.
As amazing as always, Lady G.
The sect elder clasped his hands together and gave her a polite bow.
Thank you for your time.
Ji Linshi returned the bow.
No, the pleasure is mine. It's an honor to exchange swords with a genius like you. By the way, my grandson, who's a core disciple here, asked me to.
The sect elder abruptly stopped mid-sentence, his gaze shifting as he noticed Li Jinsy had turned her head, her attention clearly fixed elsewhere. Everyone quickly noticed her sudden distraction and turned to see what had caught her attention, only to find an unfamiliar, strikingly handsome man standing there, someone none of them recognized.
I didn't think you'd actually come see me.
Li Jinsy suddenly said.
Why wouldn't I? You visited everyone but me, and that was a month ago. I was going to visit you sooner, but I ended up staying with Yuro for longer than anticipated. Relax, I'm aware. I was just joking with you.
Yuan was speechless. Li Jinsy wasn't the type to joke around. How much has she changed since we last met? He wondered inwardly.
Do you remember our arrangements?
Li Jinsy suddenly asked.
Of course. I'll take you on any time. Then meet me at the place you sparred with Senior Kellen a month ago tomorrow.
She said before flying away. Yuan could only stand there with a dazed look on his face.
Excuse me, but who are you?
One of the sect elders suddenly asked, snapping him out of his daze.
I'm just a guest.
After saying that, Yuan activated Shadow Veil and disappeared before them like a ghost. The following day, Yuan made his way to the White Space training ground. Not seeing Li Jinsy outside, he decided to head inside to check if she was already there. Sure enough, once inside, he could see Li Jinsy standing not far away with the Golden Empress already in her grasp.
Before we begin, I want to make one thing clear. Fight me with everything you have from the very start.
Li Jinsy said calmly, her gaze locked with Yuan's.
If you hold back or look down on me, I won't forgive you.
Yuan gave a silent nod in response, his expression unreadable. 2000